Michaela Makarevi. The first case on our list is Michaela Makarevi. On January 10, 2011, the 27-year-old teacher from Northern Ireland was found in her hotel room at the Luex Grand Gobe Hotel in Mauritius. Michaela and her husband John Makarevi had been married just 10 days earlier. They were enjoying what should have been the happiest time of their lives. Instead, it ended in tragedy. That afternoon, Michaela and John finished lunch together at the hotel restaurant around 2:30. Michaela realized she had left some biscuits in their room. She told John she would go back to get them while he stayed to pay the bill. She walked back to their room alone. When John returned to the room around 15 minutes later, he found the door ajar. Inside, he discovered Michaela in the bathtub. Water was running. He pulled her out and attempted to revive her, but she was unresponsive. Hotel staff and medical personnel arrived quickly. Despite their efforts, Michaela was pronounced deceased. An autopsy revealed she had been strangled. The bathtub scene appeared staged, designed to look like a drowning. The room showed signs of disturbance. Someone had been inside while Michaela was there. But who would want to harm a newlywed on her honeymoon? Police immediately began investigating. They reviewed security footage and hotel access logs. 3 hotel workers became suspects. Avinash Tribhuwan and Sandeep Munia worked as room attendants. Raj Thikoi worked in housekeeping. All 3 had access to the rooms. Security records showed they had entered the Makarevi room around the time Michaela returned. 2 other employees were detained. Specifically, Dasan Narayan was formally charged with conspiracy to commit larceny in 2011 and was arrested again in 2022 on a conspiracy to murder charge. Though the case was eventually struck out by the court in 2023. The suspects claimed they had entered the room to steal. When Michaela walked in unexpectedly, they panicked. According to their statements, she caught them in the act. A confrontation occurred. They claimed things escalated quickly. Michaela was strangled during the struggle. They then placed her body in the bathtub and turned on the water, attempting to make it appear accidental. Strangely, nothing of value was actually taken from the room. Could this explanation be trusted? The investigation faced immediate criticism. Forensic evidence was poorly handled. Fingerprints found at the scene were never properly examined. DNA testing was conducted, but no matches linked the accused workers directly to Michaela's body. Police methods came under scrutiny when Tribhuwan alleged he had been mistreated during interrogation. He claimed officers beat him for 3 days to force a confession. These allegations raised serious questions about the reliability of the statements obtained. The trial began on May 22, 2012, in Mauritius's Supreme Court. It lasted 8 weeks. John Makarevi took the stand and described finding his wife. He recounted being handcuffed by police in the immediate aftermath, a detail that shocked many observers. Forensic experts testified that no DNA from the accused was found at the scene. The defense highlighted multiple investigative failures. They pointed to contaminated evidence and questionable interrogation tactics. On July 12, 2012, the jury delivered their verdict. After just 2 hours of deliberation, they acquitted both Tribhuwan and Munia unanimously. Judge Prithviraj Fekna had instructed the jury to focus solely on the evidence before them, regardless of international attention or tourism concerns. The acquittal meant no one would be held accountable for Michaela's passing. The Makarevi and Hart families were devastated. They described feeling a sense of devastation and desolation that words could not capture. The case remains officially unsolved. In 2017, John returned to Mauritius and to the hotel. He told reporters that sometimes you have to face pain directly and do what needs to be done. A BBC documentary in 2023 examined the case again. 15 years later, Michaela's family continues to seek answers. But justice remains elusive. The hotel workers walked free. No new arrests have been made. The questions surrounding those 15 minutes in room 1025 have never been answered. The next case would unfold with even greater horror. Ben and Catherine Mullaney. On July 27, 2008, Ben and Catherine Mullaney were shot in their hotel cottage in Antigua on the final night of their honeymoon. Ben Mullaney was 31, a physiotherapy student from South Wales. Catherine Mullaney was also 31, working as a pediatrician. They had just celebrated 2 weeks of marriage. They were supposed to fly home the next morning. Instead, intruders entered their room and opened fire. The attack happened during the night. Someone broke into their cottage at the Cocos Hotel. Catherine was shot in the head. The wound was instantly fatal. Ben was shot in the neck. He survived initially, but was critically injured. Staff discovered them the following morning. Ben was airlifted back to Wales for treatment. He remained on life support for several days. On August 3, 2008, his family made the heartbreaking decision to withdraw support. Ben passed away, joining his wife. Police launched an immediate investigation. The motive appeared to be robbery. Items had been taken from the room, including cash and mobile phones. However, the stolen goods were described as minimal gains. The level of harm used seemed excessive for such a small theft. This suggested the perpetrators were willing to use extreme measures regardless of potential profit. Investigators quickly focused on two local men. Kaniel Martin and Avi Howell became the primary suspects. Evidence linked them to the scene. DNA analysis placed them at the cottage. Ballistics testing connected weapons to the shootings. Gunshot residue was found on their clothing. The case grew more serious when investigators discovered both men were connected to another incident. Weeks after the Mullaney attack, a shopkeeper named Juanita Anderson was shot and lost her life during a robbery. The same weapon had been used. Martin and Howell were responsible for 3 separate fatalities. What drove such senseless acts? The trial took place in 2011 at Antigua's High Court. 90 witnesses testified over the course of proceedings. The prosecution presented overwhelming forensic evidence. DNA, ballistics, and residue all pointed to Martin and Howell. The defense maintained their innocence, but the evidence was damning. The jury deliberated and found both men guilty on all 3 counts of taking lives. On December 16, 2011, Justice Richard Floyd sentenced Martin and Howell to 3 consecutive life terms. The judge avoided imposing the death penalty, stating this was not the worst possible case, though he acknowledged the acts were repugnant and distasteful. He noted the extreme levels of harm used. Detective Superintendent Keith Niven, who led the investigation, stated that the level of force indicated the primary intention was to cause fatalities, not simply to steal. The case drew international attention to crime rates in tourist destinations. Antigua's Prime Minister, Baldwin Spencer, acknowledged concerns. He attributed rising crime to individuals who had been deported from other countries and returned to the island. The case raised questions about safety at Caribbean resorts. For the Mullaney families, the convictions brought some measure of closure. But nothing could return Ben and Catherine. 2 young professionals with promising futures had been taken in a senseless act for virtually nothing. Martin earned a degree while in prison in 2022. Avi Howell was shot and killed by police in April 2014 during a breakout attempt from Her Majesty's prison in Antigua. Another case would involve questions that divided a courtroom. Annie Dewani. On November 13, 2010, Annie Dewani was shot in Gugulethu Township near Cape Town, South Africa. The 28-year-old was on her honeymoon with her husband, Shrien Dewani. They had been married less than 2 weeks. What happened that night would spark years of legal battles, international extradition proceedings, and fierce debate about what really occurred. That evening, Shrien and Annie hired a taxi driver named Zola Tongo to show them around Cape Town. Tongo drove them through various areas of the city. Eventually, he took them into Gugulethu, a township known for high crime rates. According to Tongo's later testimony, 2 armed men approached the taxi and forced their way inside. They ordered Tongo to drive to a different location. At some point during this ordeal, Shrien was released. He was found by police shortly after, appearing distressed and claiming he had been carjacked along with his wife. The following morning, police found Annie's body in the abandoned taxi. She had been shot in the neck. Her personal belongings, including an engagement ring valued at approximately 25,000 pounds, roughly 300,000 rand, were missing, suggesting a much higher value target than a random petty theft. The scene appeared to be a hijacking gone wrong. Carjackings were unfortunately common in the area. At first, authorities treated it as such. But as they investigated further, a different picture began to emerge. Within days, police arrested Zolili Mngeni. His palm print was found in the taxi. 2 more men, Maziwa Madoda Kwabe and Monde Mbolombo, were arrested shortly after. Then the taxi driver, Zola Tongo, was brought in. Under interrogation, Tongo made a shocking claim. He alleged that Shrien Dewani had approached him before the incident. According to Tongo, Shrien had paid him to arrange a staged hijacking. The plan, Tongo claimed, was for Annie to be taken and harmed while Shrien would be released unharmed. This allegation transformed the case from a random crime to an alleged conspiracy. Could a husband really plan such a thing? The alleged accomplices made plea deals in exchange for their testimony. Tongo pleaded guilty and received 18 years. Kwabe received 25 years. Mngeni was convicted and given a life sentence, though he passed away in prison in 2014. Mbolombo received immunity in exchange for testifying. All of them pointed to Shrien as the mastermind. South African authorities sought to extradite Shrien from the United Kingdom to face trial. The legal battle over extradition lasted years. Shrien fought the process, citing mental health concerns. Eventually, in 2014, he was extradited to South Africa. The trial began in Cape Town. Prosecutors presented the testimony of Tongo and the other alleged conspirators. They described in detail how Shrien supposedly arranged everything. The defense attacked the credibility of these witnesses. They highlighted the fact that all had made deals to reduce their sentences. They pointed out inconsistencies in their stories. As the trial progressed, the prosecution's case began to fall apart. Judge Jeanette Traverso ultimately acquitted Shrien, stating that the witness testimony was filled with fundamental contradictions. She noted that the witnesses had lied repeatedly. Their accounts changed over time. There was no physical evidence linking Shrien to a conspiracy. The prosecution had relied entirely on the word of convicted individuals who had clear motivations to lie. The judge dismissed all charges. The Hindocha family, Annie's relatives, released a statement. They said they accepted that Shrien did not personally harm Annie. However, they maintained he had lied to them and withheld information. Questions remained about his actions that night and in the days following. Shrien returned to the United Kingdom. The case highlighted the difficulties of prosecuting crimes that rely on testimony from unreliable witnesses. For Annie's family, the acquittal meant they would never know the complete truth about what happened that November night in Gugulethu. But the next case would leave no doubt about who was responsible. Christy Chen. In July 2022, Christy Chen was found deceased at the Turtle Island Resort in Fiji. The 36-year-old pharmacist from Memphis, Tennessee, had been on her honeymoon for just 2 days. Her new husband, Bradley Robert Dawson, was 40 years old and worked in information technology. They were staying at one of Fiji's most exclusive and remote resorts. The island paradise became the scene of a tragedy that would shock both families and the resort community. Resort staff became concerned. They heard sounds of an argument coming from the couple's bungalow. Raised voices echoed across the quiet island. Staff debated whether to intervene. Before they could act, the noise stopped. The next morning, Bradley Dawson appeared at the resort's main area. He seemed disheveled and upset. He told staff that Christy was unresponsive in their room. Resort employees rushed to the bungalow. What they found was Christy's lifeless body. She had suffered severe headbutts, trauma. Medical personnel were called, but it was too late. An examination revealed blunt force trauma to her head and body. The injuries were consistent with being struck repeatedly. This was not an accident. This was not a fall. Someone had intentionally harmed Christ. Police were immediately contacted. Fiji authorities began investigating what should have been a celebration of new marriage. Bradley Dawson's behavior raised immediate suspicions. Rather than cooperating with police, he fled. He took a kayak from the resort and paddled away from Turtle Island. Fiji police launched a search. They tracked him to another nearby island where he was attempting to hide. Authorities arrested him and brought him back for questioning. During interviews, Dawson gave inconsistent accounts of what happened. His explanations did not align with the physical evidence found at the scene. What could have gone so wrong in just 2 days? Police charged Dawson with taking Christy's life. Investigation revealed that the couple had been arguing before her passing. Staff had heard the confrontation. Forensic evidence showed the injuries Christ sustained were severe and numerous. The prosecution built a case based on physical evidence, witness testimony from resort staff, and Dawson's flight after the incident. The fact that he ran rather than seeking help was presented as consciousness of guilt. The trial took place in Fiji's legal system. Dawson maintained various defenses, but prosecutors methodically presented their evidence. Medical experts testified about the nature and severity of Christa's injuries. Resort employees described what they heard the night before she was found. Dawson's attempted escape was highlighted. The jury heard all the evidence over several weeks of testimony. In November 2024, the Fiji High Court convicted Bradley Dawson and sentenced him to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 18 years. The judge noted the severity of the crime and the fact that it occurred during what should have been a time of celebration. Christy's family released statements expressing their grief. They described Christ as a dedicated professional who cared deeply about her patients and loved ones. Her career as a pharmacist had been built on helping others. Her family struggled to understand how her life could end this way. The case drew attention to the risks that can exist even in intimate relationships. Christ had married Bradley believing they would build a life together. Instead, their honeymoon became her final days. The remote island location meant she had no easy escape. The isolation that makes resorts like Turtle Island appealing also meant there was no quick intervention when things went wrong. Dawson remains imprisoned in Fiji. Under their legal system, he will serve at least 18 years before being eligible for consideration for release. The paradise setting of their honeymoon became forever, associated with loss and betrayal. The next case would take place beneath the ocean's surface. Tina Watson. On October 22, 2003, Tina Watson passed away while scuba diving at the SS Yongala wreck site off the coast of Queensland, Australia. She was 26 years old and had been married to Gabe Watson for just 11 days. The couple from Alabama had traveled to Australia specifically for this diving trip. Tina was an open-water certified diver but was considered a novice for the challenging conditions of the Yongala wreck, having completed only 11 dives in total before the incident. Gabe was a certified rescue diver, a sophisticated level of training that indicated he possessed the specialized skills required to assist a panicked vent diver, a fact that became the centerpiece of the prosecution's negligence argument. What happened on that dive would become one of the most controversial cases involving a honeymoon tragedy. The SS Yongala is a famous dive site, but it is also challenging. The wreck sits in deep water with strong currents. Operators recommend it only for experienced divers. Tina and Gabe descended to the wreck together. They were part of a larger group, but each pair of divers was expected to stay with their buddy. According to Gabe's account, Tina began having problems with her equipment shortly after they reached the wreck. He claimed she panicked and knocked his mask loose. In the confusion, they became separated. By the time Gabe surfaced and alerted others, Tina had already passed away on the ocean floor. Another diver, Dr. Stanley Stutz, was nearby during the incident. He later testified that he saw Gabe hovering above Tina as she lay motionless on the seabed. Stutz found this strange. If Tina was in distress, why was Gabe not attempting a rescue? Stutz swam down and brought Tina's body to the surface himself. She could not be revived. The question that would haunt the case was simple. Why did Gabe surface and leave his wife behind? Australian authorities investigated immediately. Gabe's story raised red flags. He claimed equipment failure and panic. But experts questioned why an experienced diver would abandon his wife. Dive computers recovered from both Gabe and Tina told a different story than Gabe's account. The data suggested things happened differently than he described. Australian prosecutors charged Gabe Watson with causing Tina's passing. Was this an accident or something more sinister? The case took years to reach trial. Gabe returned to the United States after the incident. Australian authorities sought his extradition. Eventually, he agreed to return to Australia to face charges. In 2009, Gabe Watson pleaded guilty to manslaughter. He admitted he had failed to properly assist Tina when she experienced trouble. He acknowledged his dive buddy responsibilities. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison, though he had already served significant time awaiting trial. He was released and returned to Alabama. Tina's father, Tommy Thomas, was not satisfied with the Australian outcome. He believed Gabe had intentionally caused his daughter's passing. He pushed for American prosecutors to file charges. In Alabama, Gabe was charged with capital offense. Prosecutors alleged he had planned Tina's demise to collect insurance money. They pointed to the fact that Gabe had increased Tina's life insurance shortly before the wedding. They also noted that Gabe had remarried quickly after Tina's passing. The Alabama trial began in 2012. Gabe's defense team argued there was insufficient evidence to prove intentional harm. They claimed the Australian guilty plea was only to avoid a longer sentence. They presented diving experts who testified that accidents like this can happen even to experienced divers. The prosecution struggled to prove intent beyond reasonable doubt. The judge ultimately dismissed the case, ruling that the evidence did not support a conviction for intentional harm. Gabe Watson walked free. The case remains deeply divisive. Some believe Gabe was a victim of circumstance and panic underwater. Others, including Tina's family, believe he deliberately caused her passing. The truth may never be fully known. What is certain is that Tina Watson went on a honeymoon dive and never returned. Whether through negligence or intent, Gabe Watson's actions that day cost his new bride her life. He served minimal time and rebuilt his life. Tina's family continues to grieve the daughter they lost beneath the waves of the Coral Sea. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. The next case would involve the open ocean and questions that remain unanswered. Karen Roston. In January 1988, Karen Roston was found floating in the waters off the coast of Kinneil Bay in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Karen Roston was 26 years old. She and Scott were on a honeymoon cruise aboard the luxury liner SS Star Dancer, traveling from San Pedro to Mexico. Instead, Karen's body was discovered in the ocean, and her husband's account of what happened would raise immediate suspicions. Scott Roston reported that Karen had fallen overboard during the night. He claimed he woke up and discovered she was missing from their sailboat. He said he searched for her but could not find her in the darkness. He waited until morning to alert authorities. When Coast Guard personnel recovered Karen's body, they found evidence that contradicted Scott's story. Karen had been strangled. Marks on her neck indicated manual compression. This was not a simple drowning from falling overboard. Investigators began piecing together what really happened that night. Forensic evidence showed Karen had been on the boat when she was strangled. Her body had then been thrown into the water. Scott's explanation that she simply fell overboard was impossible given the physical evidence. Police arrested Scott Roston and charged him with taking his wife's life. The motive remained unclear, though investigators suspected marital disputes may have played a role. The case went to trial in federal court because the incident occurred in U.S. territorial waters. Prosecutors presented forensic evidence showing Karen had been strangled and thrown overboard. Medical examiners testified about the injuries to her neck. They explained that the pattern of bruising was consistent with manual strangulation. The defense attempted to argue that Karen's injuries could have occurred another way, but the medical evidence was clear. The jury heard testimony over several weeks. What could drive someone to such an act just weeks after marriage? Scott Roston was convicted of causing Karen's passing. He was sentenced to life in federal prison. The conviction was based heavily on the forensic evidence and the impossibility of his original story. However, the case did not end there. Roston appealed his conviction multiple times over the following years. His legal team argued various procedural issues and challenged aspects of the forensic testimony. Several appeals were denied, but the case continued to wind through the court system. In later appeals, some aspects of Roston's sentence were reconsidered. While his conviction stood, there were adjustments made to his sentence on technical grounds. The appeals process demonstrated the complexity of cases involving crimes in international or territorial waters. Jurisdiction, evidence handling, and legal procedures all became points of contention. Throughout it all, Karen's family maintained that justice had been served with the conviction, even as the legal battles continued. Scott Roston's life sentence was eventually reduced to 33 years, but he was released from federal prison in 2005 after serving approximately 17 years. He has since maintained a low profile under a different name. He did not maintain a public presence. For Karen's family, the years of legal proceedings and eventual release of the man convicted of taking her life brought a mixture of emotions. They had lost Karen during what should have been the happiest time of her life. The case highlighted the particular challenges of investigating and prosecuting crimes that occur on private vessels in open water. Evidence collection is difficult. Witnesses are often limited to those on board. The isolation that makes sailing romantic also makes it dangerous when something goes wrong. Karen Roston's honeymoon ended not with memories of Caribbean sunsets, but with her body floating in Caneel Bay. Her family's fight for justice lasted decades. Even with a conviction, the legal battles continued long after Karen's passing. The ocean that was supposed to be the backdrop for her honeymoon became the site of her final moments. Another case would involve a cruise ship and a mystery that has never been solved. George and Jennifer Smith. On July 5, 2005, George Allen Smith IV disappeared from a Royal Caribbean cruise ship in the Mediterranean Sea. He was 26 years old, from Greenwich, Connecticut. George and his wife Jennifer Hagel had married on June 25, 2005, just 10 days before the cruise. They were on their honeymoon aboard the Brilliance of the Seas. What happened to George that night remains one of the most mysterious cases involving a missing person at sea. The evening of July 4th, George and Jennifer had been drinking at various bars on the ship. They were celebrating with other passengers they had met during the cruise. According to witnesses, George consumed a significant amount of beverages that night. Security footage showed him being helped back to his cabin by several young men around 4 in the morning. Jennifer had gone ahead earlier. She later reported that she woke up in a different cabin and did not remember how she got there. When she returned to their cabin the next morning, George was gone. Crew members discovered a disturbing scene. There was blood on the overhang directly below George and Jennifer's balcony. Blood was also found inside the cabin. The furniture was disturbed. Most alarmingly, George's body was never recovered. He had vanished. The ship's logs showed no record of anyone falling or jumping overboard during the night. Yet George was simply gone. Search efforts were launched, but no trace of him was found in the Mediterranean waters. Who were the last people to see George alive? Investigators focused on 3 young men who had been with George that night: Josh Askin, Rusty Kaufman, and the Rosenberg brothers, Zach and Greg. These Russian-American students had befriended George and Jennifer during the cruise. Security footage showed them helping George back to his room. Key card logs indicated someone entered the cabin multiple times during the early morning hours. The young men were questioned extensively. Their accounts were inconsistent. Some details changed between interviews. All maintained they had simply helped George to his room and left. The FBI took over the investigation because the ship was in international waters. They conducted an extensive probe that generated 97,000 pages of documents. Forensic experts examined the blood evidence. They interviewed hundreds of passengers and crew members. They analyzed security footage frame by frame. Despite all this effort, they could not definitively determine what happened to George. The evidence suggested foul play, but there was insufficient proof to charge anyone with a crime. George's parents, Maureen and George Smith III, refused to accept that their son simply fell overboard. They believed he was the victim of an intentional act. They pushed for continued investigation. They appeared on television programs pleading for anyone with information to come forward. They criticized the cruise line's handling of the initial response. They questioned why the ship continued its journey rather than immediately returning to port. Their efforts kept the case in the public eye for years. In 2015, the FBI officially closed the case without filing charges. They stated they had exhausted all investigative leads. No arrests were made. The 3 young men who had been with George that night were never charged. They maintained they had nothing to do with his disappearance. Jennifer eventually remarried and moved on with her life. She gave limited interviews about that night, stating she remembered very little due to intoxication. While Gregory Rosenberg faced legal trouble for drug trafficking in 2011 and served time in prison, there are no verified reports of his death in 2019. He has largely remained out of the public eye following his release. His case remains unsolved. Whether this has any connection to George Smith's disappearance is unknown. George's family continues to believe their son was the victim of foul play. They maintain that someone on that ship knows what really happened. But without a body, without definitive evidence, and without witnesses willing to talk, the truth about George Smith's final hours remains lost somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea. His disappearance stands as a cautionary tale about the unique challenges of investigating crimes on cruise ships, where jurisdiction is murky and evidence can literally disappear over the side of a vessel. But one case would involve a calculated plan on the open water. Isabella Hellman. In May 2017, Isabella Hellman disappeared while sailing from Cuba to Florida with her husband, Louis Bennett. The 37-year-old real estate broker from Delray Beach had a young daughter from a previous relationship. She had recently married Bennett, a 42-year-old experienced sailor from Australia who held dual citizenship in the United Kingdom. They were returning from what Bennett described as a belated honeymoon trip. Isabella never made it home. Her body has never been found. Bennett's distress call came in the early morning hours of May 15th. He reported that his catamaran had struck an unknown object and was taking on water. He said he woke up to find the boat sinking. He claimed he searched for Isabella but could not find her. He abandoned ship in a life raft. Coast Guard crews found him hours later, alone in the raft. Isabella was gone. The catamaran had sunk. Bennett said he had done everything he could to find his wife before the boat went down. Investigators immediately found Bennett's story suspicious. When they examined his life raft, they discovered something shocking. The raft was loaded with valuable items from the boat. He had taken time to gather coins, electronics, and other possessions. Yet he claimed he had no time to properly search for his missing wife. Coast Guard personnel questioned why someone frantically searching for their spouse would stop to load valuables into a life raft. Could the sinking have been deliberate? The FBI launched a full investigation. They brought in maritime experts to examine what could be recovered from the sunken vessel. Expert analysis concluded that the boat had been intentionally scuttled. Holes had been deliberately opened in the hull. This was not an accident caused by striking an object. This was sabotage. The evidence suggested Bennett had sunk his own boat intentionally. The question was why, and what had happened to Isabella as investigators dug deeper. They uncovered potential motives. Isabella owned property and had financial assets. Bennett stood to inherit if she passed away. There were also custody considerations involving Isabella's daughter from her previous relationship. The child had been staying with Isabella's mother while the couple sailed to Cuba. If Isabella was gone, questions would arise about the daughter's future and finances held in trust for her. Bennett was arrested and charged with causing Isabella's passing. The prosecution argued he had planned everything carefully. He scuttled the boat to hide evidence. He created a scenario where Isabella disappeared at sea with no body to examine. He loaded the life raft with valuables to ensure he could profit even if insurance claims were denied. The minimal search he conducted for Isabella was merely for appearances. In 2018, rather than face a trial that could result in a harsher sentence, Bennett pleaded guilty to manslaughter. He admitted he had caused Isabella's passing, though the specific details of how she was harmed were never fully revealed. In 2019, he was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. The judge noted the calculated nature of his actions and the fact that he had deprived Isabella's young daughter of her mother. Isabella's daughter, Emilia, went to live with Bennett's parents in Scotland after Isabella's disappearance. Isabella's mother fought for custody, but faced legal challenges due to the international nature of the case. The family was left grieving not only Isabella's loss, but also the separation from Amelia. Following his 8-year sentence for involuntary manslaughter, Lewis Bennett was released from federal prison in October 2023. He was subsequently deported to the United Kingdom. He has never revealed what he did with Isabella's body. The ocean keeps that secret. For Isabella's family, the lack of closure compounds their grief. They cannot properly lay her to rest. They can only know that the man who took her life is serving time. Though many believe 8 years is insufficient for such a calculated act. The next case would involve a different kind of journey home. William Micah Carter and Jennifer Lower. On November 30th, 2025, William Micah Carter and Jennifer Lynn Lower were returning from their wedding reception when their vehicle struck a jackknifed semi-truck on Highway 20 in Oregon. William was 25 years old from Springfield, Oregon. Jennifer was 24 from the John Day and Preston, Idaho area. They had just gotten married hours earlier. Instead of beginning their lives together, both lost their lives in the collision. The crash would raise serious questions about negligence and immigration law. The incident occurred in the darkness of early morning. A semi-truck driven by Rajinder Kumar had jackknifed across Highway 20. The truck blocked multiple lanes of traffic. There were no warning devices deployed, no flares, no triangles, no lights beyond what was on the truck itself. The highway was dark. Other drivers approaching the scene had no advance warning of the obstacle ahead. William Nuss. Jennifer's vehicle struck the jackknifed trailer at highway speed. Both were pronounced deceased at the scene. Oregon State Police began investigating immediately. They determined that Kumar, the 32-year-old truck driver, had caused the jackknife through some form of driver error. More concerning was what investigators discovered about Kumar's legal status. He was an Indian national who had been in the United States illegally since 2022. Despite this status, he had obtained a commercial driver's license and was working as a trucker for a company based in Fresno, California. How had someone in the country illegally obtained authorization to drive commercial vehicles? The investigation revealed multiple failures. Kumar should not have had a commercial license. The company that employed him either failed to properly verify his status or chose to ignore it. The jackknife itself raised questions about Kumar's training and competence. The failure to deploy warning devices after the jackknife showed a disregard for the safety of other motorists. All of these factors contributed to William and Jennifer's passing on what should have been the happiest day of their lives. Kumar was arrested and charged with 2 counts of negligent manslaughter. Immigration and Customs Enforcement immediately lodged a detainer against him, indicating they intended to pursue deportation proceedings after any criminal case concluded. Kumar was held on $500,000 bail. His legal proceedings have been complex, involving both the criminal charges and immigration issues. As of January 12, 2026, Rajinder Kumar remains in custody. The legal proceedings in the Deschutes County Circuit Court are ongoing, with the defense and prosecution currently navigating evidentiary motions regarding the truck's black box data and the driver's training records. The delay has extended the period of uncertainty for William and Jennifer's families. They want accountability for the loss of their loved ones. They want answers about how this tragedy could have been prevented. The case has drawn attention to gaps in the system that allowed Kumar to drive commercially despite his immigration status. It has raised questions about trucking company hiring practices. It has highlighted the consequences when regulations designed to protect public safety are not properly enforced. For Williams and Jennifer's families, these systemic issues are more than abstract policy debates. They represent the failures that cost them their children. William and Jennifer died on a highway in the darkness, returning from celebrating their marriage with family and friends. They never got to start their honeymoon. They never got to build the life together they had planned. Instead, their families planned funerals. Their story serves as a tragic reminder that honeymoon tragedies are not always about intentional harm. Sometimes they result from negligence, from systems that fail, from people who should not have been in positions where their mistakes could cost lives. As Kumar's case proceeds through the courts, two families wait for some measure of justice for the newlyweds who never made it home. The final case would involve a national park and a confession that shocked investigators. Cody Johnson. On July 7, 2013, Cody Lee Johnson fell to his demise from a cliff in Glacier National Park, Montana. He was 25 years old, an outgoing car enthusiast from Kalispell who had just married Jordan Lynn Graham 8 days earlier on June 29th. Jordan, then 22 years old, worked as a nanny. The couple's relationship had been brief. Their marriage was even briefer. What Jordan told police about Cody's passing would change multiple times before the truth emerged. Cody Johnson's friends and family were the ones who initially reported him missing to the police. Jordan only presented the fabricated email to Cody's mother after his disappearance began to raise local alarms. The email allegedly said Cody was going to be gone for a while. She said she was worried because this was out of character. Search and rescue teams were dispatched to look for him. On July 12th, rangers found Cody's body at the bottom of a cliff in an area called The Loop. He had fallen approximately 200 feet. The injuries were consistent with such a fall. Initially, rangers suspected an accident. The Loop is a popular hiking area, but it can be dangerous. The cliffs are steep. People have fallen before. Jordan maintained that she had not been with Cody and did not know how he ended up at that location. However, as investigators looked more closely at her story, inconsistencies appeared. The email she claimed to have received could not be traced to any real person. Her timeline of events did not match security camera footage from around the park. Investigators pressed Jordan for more information. Her story began to change. Eventually, she admitted she had been with Cody at the Loop. She said they had gone there to talk. She claimed they were arguing about their marriage. According to this version, they were standing near the cliff when Cody grabbed her. She said she pushed him away to defend herself. He lost his balance and fell. It was an accident, she insisted. She panicked and fled rather than reporting what happened. Why would someone lie about an accident? As investigators dug deeper into Jordan and Cody's relationship, a troubling picture emerged. Jordan had been having serious doubts about the marriage almost immediately. Friends later reported that she had expressed regret about getting married. Text messages showed she had been having what she described as emotional breakdowns. She felt trapped. Cody, meanwhile, had been excited about their marriage. His mother later testified that he had been joyful at the wedding. He was looking forward to building a life with Jordan. Federal prosecutors charged Jordan with second-degree homicide because the incident occurred on federal land in a national park. They did not believe Jordan's claim of self-defense. The evidence suggested something more deliberate. Forensic analysis of Cody's injuries showed he had suffered blunt force trauma consistent with the fall, but the circumstances of how he fell remained in question. Witnesses placed Jordan and Cody together on the day he disappeared, contradicting her initial claims. Rather than proceed to trial, Jordan accepted a plea agreement in December 2013. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. By pleading guilty, she acknowledged that she had intentionally pushed Cody off the cliff. It was not self-defense. It was not an accident. She had taken her husband to a remote location and pushed him to his passing. Her motive was her regret over the marriage and her desire to escape it. In March 2014, Jordan Lynn Graham was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. The judge noted the severity of the crime and the betrayal of trust involved. Cody had trusted Jordan as his wife. He had gone with her to that cliff, believing they were going to talk through their problems. Instead, she ended his life. Because this is a federal sentence, there's no parole in the Mitsun federal system. Jordan is currently serving her sentence at a federal prison in Aliceville, Alabama. Based on federal sentencing guidelines and good time credits, Jordan Graham's projected release date is July 2039, at which point she will be 48 years old. For Cody's family and friends, the case brought some closure, but endless pain. Cody's childhood friend Cameron Fredrickson spoke about losing someone who had been like a brother. Cody's mother testified about her son's excitement about the marriage and his future. They had to reconcile the fact that the person Cody loved and trusted most had taken his life just days after their wedding. The case serves as a stark reminder that honeymoon tragedies can come from within the marriage itself. Jordan's impulsive decision on a cliff in Glacier National Park ended one life and destroyed many others. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.